I feel like as a self-taught creative, you feel like creativity, there's a cap at it. There's like, oh, I can only do so much as my person, and there's only like one way to do that. Like I was opened up to like a whole new side of the world. I started seeing the world completely different. Being at the academy in an agency setting like that made me look at things more differently, whether it's like a billboard, a TV ad, or even like a graphic. Creative wise, I think that's how I changed. Understanding intention, the thought behind stuff, especially in freelance. You're either good or you're not. And if you're not good, you need to get good.
And you've shared with me, you've had moments where you were financially struggling, sleeping on couches, figuring things out day by day.
At that time too, like I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to live at. So I was bouncing around. The thing that like brought me out of that, it was an understanding that my right now isn't my forever. I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a bunch of other freelancers who fostered like growth for me. That growth in conjunction with the academy helped me accelerate. The best thing that came out of the academy though was my best friend, and I got a really, really solid crew of people.
Gian, designer extraordinary, Renaissance man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you joining us again. As previously mentioned, I think we met virtually, of course. It was about 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago now, when I was mulling the idea of possibly launching some clothing merch myself, which absolutely fell through. But I remember specifically in that conversation promising that I'd have you on for an interview with citiZen. So I'm glad we finally made it happen. So before we get into the, and just to preface, fun story, Gian and I actually recorded this conversation earlier this year, and it was such a good one. But as it happens, sometimes we ran into a few technical difficulties with the footage and all. So I'm glad that we're running it back. And that said, I'm honestly excited that we get the chance to sit down again because a lot has happened since our last conversation. Gian's graduated from the Academy by Goodby Silverstein and Partners. He started a nonprofit called Dream State, and you've really stepped into this new creative chapter. So in a way, this conversation kind of picks up right where we left off, but with a new layer of reflection and growth added in. So let's get into it. So welcome back, Gian.
Thank you, bro. Thank you for having me. Excited to have this conversation again, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Like
Yeah.
mentioned, we had such a great conversation earlier this year, and I'm glad we get to do this again. You've had quite the year, graduating from the academy, starting Dream State, and then building your freelance career. So, in a few words, just how are you feeling about life right now?
Just for clarification, I didn't start Dream State. I'm helping start it. Like I'm one of like the first people to do it. Um, but yeah, no, life is insane. I was in the middle of the academy, which is like intensive like portfolio school. Didn't really know what I wanted to do in terms of like after the program. I had an idea of like, okay, maybe I'll do advertising,
Yeah.
and I think that's still like in my heart a little bit, but it's really shifted to like I have a focus of like wanting to do photo for like my freelance career,
Hmm.
and be a photographer like full time.
That's awesome.
And like I've been working in this space now for in photography for the past like since the summer, like really having that different like dedication to it. And yeah, like life has looked completely different since then. Still doing Dream State, lucky to be a part of that. Um, I'm working with some of my best friends, and a lot of the time it feels like it's us against the world. Trying to tell these stories, trying to make impact in the world that we live in now, through creativity and through an art. So yeah, that's kind of like in a nutshell what life is like right now. Um, a lot of creativity. Incredibly blessed to be on that like tip. Like, 'cause I know a lot of people have that intention to be creative for a living, but um, in general, like I'm extremely blessed to have the opportunity to create, to have conversations like this, and um, to be doing what I'm doing right now.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on it already, and I get the sense that, creativity may be one of those words, but to start us off again, If you could pick 3 words to describe your current journey, what would they be and why?
I think expansive, challenging, and I say grace filled because there's a lot of like new learnings that's happening right now, like
Mm-hmm.
me changing out of my old habits and me being introduced to a whole new like side of like what life is.
Yeah.
And I feel like that mentality shift and that change, you need to approach it with a grace mindset,
Mm-hmm.
with a lot of like understanding that there will be some growing pains. So that's why I say grace filled. I say expansive because my world is constantly growing every day, and I'm learning new things every day.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Those are the 2 softball questions. We'll get into the more substantive stuff now. In your original blog post, you talked about the buddy company being born out of struggle and the realization that, community and connection really matter. Since then, life shifted a lot for you. For those not familiar, give folks a rundown as to what the buddy company is, and when you look back on that first version of yourself, what do you see differently now?
There was never like an official like buddies over, you know. There was never like a goodbye like thank you post. They just like I just stopped posting and stopped doing it. Um, and who knows, maybe I'll pick it up again. But I think um, something that I've actually been reflecting a lot about um, is like Buddy almost seems like an idea of like a 20-year-old, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Like so hopeful, so only positive, right? Whereas like Gian 5 years later, he understands that community isn't just like something you say and it happens. There's
mm-hmm,
greater nuance to that, and
mm,
understanding the nuance with what actually brings people together. And I think that's the biggest change in my mentality when I'm organizing these events and um, moving around in this world is understanding
mm-hmm.
the nuance that makes someone them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and for those who aren't familiar with the buddy company, explain that a bit. What was the effort? What were you trying to cultivate with that? Just give people a bird's eye view as to what it was.
Buddy Company, the pitch goes, it's a brand that highlights genuine friendships and growth that we experience with each other. So
Yeah.
it's a brand that is intentional in creating a community, creating friendships, relationships, um, in a world that's so messed up, in a world
Uh
that
huh.
is like that has like negativity on its headlines. Like Buddy is meant to be that beacon of hope. That shirt that you see someone wear walking across the street, understanding that oh that person bought into what Buddy means.
Mm,
Uh, and that was the heart behind Buddy. Not to say that like it'll never happen again, but it's more so like Buddy's heart is still there and still thriving in me. I think maybe it'll come back. Maybe it'll be in a different version. You
I'm
know.
hoping it does. I'm hoping it does, brother. And some of the clothing pieces that you had via Buddy Company, man, I'm so it's one of my biggest regrets that I didn't cop while they were still in stock
Yeah.
because oh my gosh,
Yeah.
the mechanic shirts, the hoodies, like all of
Yeah.
it. You really did your big one with that one, and
I appreciate it,
regardless
bro.
of whether or not it's on pause right now, at least you have that foundation. At least you know um, what you're capable of in building such structure and foundation that the Buddy Company was.
Definitely like understanding how I operated Buddy and being almost on like the other side, because like I would hire photographers, I would hire creatives, and understanding like that experience, and then being now the creative that's being hired by other people, like Buddy has impacted and like been the foundation of my creativity. Yeah, no, it was never wasted. You know what I mean? Like
Amen.
it was just the season. You know?
Amen.
Yeah.
In founding Buddy and getting into your pursuits and all, you wrote about hitting what felt like rock bottom after moving to San Francisco and rebuilding from there. Now that you've experienced so much creative success, how do you stay grounded and kind of remember where you came from, remember all of those trials, remember all of those successes, and ultimately remember who you are?
I'd open up by saying this, bro. Like I don't think I'm successful yet. Like I think the runway is
I
way
beg to
longer than where I'm
differ.
at right now.
I beg to differ, brother.
I appreciate it. I think the things that keep me like grounded though are like my homies will tell me, they'll be like, "Yo, you're tripping." You know what I mean? Like they'll call
Yeah.
me out on like my like if I'm like going off on some stupid tangent, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They'll call me out. My homies are pretty real with me. My family's also pretty real with me. Creativity and photo isn't the only aspect of who I am. Um,
Yeah.
I think I'm also a big sports fan. I'm also a big like Christian. Creativity isn't the only thing that is who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So understanding I also suck at soccer. Understanding that I also could be a better Christian sometimes. Those are the things that keep me grounded.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And just for reference for the audience, Gene recently launched himself into photo or photography for MLS. Correct?
It's not for MLS, not yet, not yet. It's still on the freelance gig, freelance tip. I'm working with a like a small group of other photographers. Called with It's called Culture Wave. It's a bunch of other photographers. We're building this like publication to cover like Bay Area sports. Um, yeah, so it's on the freelance tip. But we do shoot some pretty cool stuff.
And kind of touching on the community aspect that you had mentioned a little previously. You once said that um, your North Star was about honoring the people who showed up for you. With Dream State, it seems like you've taken that to a whole new level, creating space for others to kind of find their voice. So explain how Dream State came about. I know you mentioned that you didn't necessarily found it, but you're helping with the initiative now. So how did it come about, and what has it taught you about purpose and collaboration ultimately?
Dream State's purpose is to explain how dreams change and shape across generations. So we talk about honoring the people who came before us. Directly, those are honoring like directly we're exploring what like my parents, what their dreams were, what their parents' dreams were, and how that evolved. So I
Mm-hmm.
think coming from like for me like how for example like my dad's dream, he's the first artist I've ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But he's also never like tried to pursue that. And I see whenever I have like my wins in creativity, he's the first person to congratulate me. I think in a way, I'm living his dream through that.
That's amazing.
Um, and I see that also with like every single other person that's involved with Dream State. That it's not just a singular person's win; it's the whole team, it's the culture's win.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think like because it's not just a singular win, like it not only honors ourselves but the people who came before us too.
Taking that kind of collaborative aspect, that communal aspect, down to the singular and individual level. You've had moments, and you've shared with me, you've had moments where you were financially struggling, sleeping on couches, figuring things out day by day. Um, what were you experiencing at those points in your life? And what would you say to someone who kind of feels stuck in that phase and doesn't see a way forward? Because it's a shared struggle for a lot of folks these days.
This was like around maybe August of last year. Um, I had like a weird like I had an argument with my parents and my dad, and like I ended up like moving out the house pretty abruptly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that at that time too, like I didn't have a job, I didn't have a place to live at. So I was bouncing around homies' cribs, like staying over at their place. Lucky enough, I was able to find a place to stay at for 2 weeks. But the homie was just like, "Bro, my roommate just moved out. I know you need a place to stay. Like, come kick it. It's cool."
Yeah.
Stayed at his place, and in those 2 weeks, I found a job, a roommate, a place to live. The thing that like almost brought me out of that, it was an understanding that like my right now isn't my forever,
Mm,
and I have the opportunity and the chance to grow it, to change that, to
yeah.
change what my to change what my current situation is. It's easier to say like I'm just gonna let it happen and nothing's gonna happen, or you can still go get it. You can still go after it. And I think there's a special like I talked about it earlier. Like there's a nuance to how each person can do it. There's a different way that's works for someone else. But I think for me, like I just was like, all right, I'm gonna put my head down. I'm gonna grind and work at it. My homies are gonna hear about it because I'm gonna complain a lot. Cause I'm be like, dude, this sucks. But gonna I'm gonna keep doing the work because like
Yeah.
that is like my now is not my forever.
Amen. I think one of my favorite photos that I've stumbled across on Twitter recently is of William Defoe. He has like a cigarette in mouth. He looks like he just woke up and he's holding a sign that says "Plot twist: Things will get better." And I think I think that encapsulates exactly what you shared there. You know, things will get better. Your now is not your forever. And I'm sure that the emotions that you were feeling in those moments were of like doubt and fear, and those are natural emotions, especially when embarking on something new, unknown, but they also foster a sense of growth, and they often signal that growth is ultimately near. So how do you personally work through those moments where they show up, and how do you kind of mention on it, how do you anticipate that growth, how do you look forward to that growth, how do you learn for the purposes of achieving that growth?
Understanding where you're going or understanding what the destination and working your way backwards, and understanding the things that you're experiencing right now are the things that make you the person that will be able to achieve the things that you want. I think that's the mentality that I kind of approached that really difficult like season, was that like I didn't I had no money and I wanted to be creative but I couldn't be creative. But I knew like I've heard other people talk about their stories of like I became a big podcast listener.
Love
Like
that, love
I heard
that.
a lot of people's like stories um about when they were coming up and the struggles that they did. So being able to relate that to other people
Mm.
and like relate that struggle, I think was what changed the game for me. Like I was able to keep my North Star and understanding that like that North Star isn't me, that like who I am right now, that version of me today isn't the person doing the things that are on the North Star. There's other factors that like I need to change to get there.
So
Yeah.
Gian at that time was constrained in his creative capabilities and capacities, but you kind of allowed yourself to blossom, and the academy kind of allowed you to blossom in a sense. So graduating from that program, graduating
Mhm.
from the academy, Goodby Silverstein and Partners, it's no small feat, So explain what the program is, how you came across it, and in conjunction, what were some of your biggest takeaways from that experience? Whether that be the creativity that was born out of it, the resilience, finding your voice, artist as a storyteller. Just give us an understanding of that whole experience, how you got into it, and ultimately what you took from it.
Yeah. The academy is great. Like I feel like as a self-taught creative, you feel like creativity there's a cap at it. There's like, oh, I can only do so much as my person, and there's only like one way to do that.
Yeah.
I feel like I was opened up to like like a whole new like side of the world almost. Like I started seeing the world completely different because I understood that every single thing that I see was created somehow by someone, by a designer. And I think being at the academy in an agency setting like that, forced me to grow in that. Like start made me look at things more differently, whether it's like a billboard, a TV ad, or even like a graphic. Um, I'm like starting to like notice these little things um, that were intentional at one point. They weren't just there to be there. Like it's intentional at one point. Um, that's how I think like creative wise. I think that's how I changed is like understanding intention
Mm.
and understanding like the the thought behind stuff. I think, but honestly, I think my biggest growth came outside of the academy. I was really forced to, especially in freelance. You're either good or you're not, and if
Yeah.
you're not good, you need to get good so you can pay your rent.
You gotta lock in.
Um,
Gotta lock in, as the
you
kids
gotta
say
lock
these
in,
days.
bro. You gotta lock in. Yeah, I was lucky enough to be surrounded by a bunch of other freelancers who fostered like um, growth for me. Like who were like, bro, this wasn't that good, but I'm glad you're getting another gig next week.
Uh,
You know what I mean? Like they'll tell me straight up, like, nah, dog, like that was cool. It wasn't great. It was cool though. You know, uh, so that's how like, but and then like that growth in conjunction with the academy, I think like helped me almost like accelerate. You know, um, and then I think the best thing that came out of the academy though was um, I got like my best friend out of that, and I got a really really solid um, like crew of people. You
yeah.
know, whether it's like my classmates or the people I met outside of the academy during that year. Um, I got some people who one rock with me for who I am, but
Mm.
also two like support me and have those are down to have those real ass conversations
Mm.
when maybe it's not too nice to hear.
Mm.
Who are down to tell me like that wasn't great, but like you can do better.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I really like the story as to how you managed to get into the academy. I would love for you to enlighten the audience on what that process was like, because I live my life on three values of persistence, patience, and consistency. And I think your story as to how you got into the academy encompasses all three of those values. So yeah, just touch on that a little bit.
Yeah. So academy is like the academy itself is like pretty competitive to get into. It's like it's a new program, but it's put up by one of the biggest agencies in the country. And for me, I was like, dude, I'm just this dude, small dude, small creative who doesn't really like have any connection to get into this academy thing. All I read on the website was like make creativity your career, and I was like, how do you do that? All right, it's this program. Let's do it. It's free. All right, lock in. Let's do it. I
Yep.
applied. I applied, and I didn't get in. Right, and then the haters were hating, bro. And then
They were preying on your downfall.
for real. um, and then 1 year later passed, and that same academy like came around. The applications came around. I saw it on Instagram, and then I was like, yeah, I'm gonna apply this again. Like, I really want to make creativity my career. Um, I applied, did my thing, and I was like, but they're not gonna forget me though. Like, I'm not gonna like
Mm.
let my app let my name like fall through the numbers of the hundreds of people that apply to this program. Um, I need to be one of these 15. You know, so I was like, all right. I looked on their Instagram and I was like, they kind of weak, bro. We can do this, bro. We can get their attention. It's attainable. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're getting their attention attainable. I decided to do a social media campaign, and I created three different videos or two videos to grab their attention. Um, and the first one, like the first and second one, really did that.
Yeah.
Um, I look back at it and like over 100. I was like, hey, academy, this is me, this is what I do. And then I asked my friends like, please tag the academy,
Uh.
please tag this Instagram, please tag these people, because that's how I knew worked at the agency. I was like, please tag these people. let's get their attention, let's get them to see who I am,
Yep.
and help your friend out, help the homie out, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, over 100 people commented um, across that first and second video, grabbing their attention. I skipped the first round of interviews because they were like, we already like this dude. My second interview was barely an hour. They were just like, yeah, like,
Jeez.
cool, what you been doing? I was like, oh, I've been doing this, like, buddy's been cool. And they're like, all right, cool, we'll talk to you later. And I was like, all right, is that it? And then I remember like maybe a month or two later, I got the email again, and like complete. I was ecstatic, bro. Like, I literally like that was we talk about like canon events, bro. That was a canon event. Like that my whole life changed when I got that email and like when I committed to doing the program.
That's awesome. The Dream State event that you guys had at the Asian Art Museum was huge. Um, Attendance records. You created something the museum had never seen before. Walk me through that day a little bit. What did that moment represent for you personally in creativity?
Bro, that day was insane. I think we spent about 6 months in planning for that. Actually, not, maybe even less, but like less than 6 months planning that. Um, and we had an amazing team of experienced designers, led by a insanely creative dude, my homie Spencer. Um, I think, yeah, we had a bunch of creatives, really, really tight group of friends making this happen. And I think that whole day was stressful, hella stressful. Like dog, I remember the week leading up to it too. Um,
Yeah,
Works in progress. The show was called Dream State Works in Progress, and
got
that
you.
show was the same week as graduation for the academy. So I
Oh
had a
shit.
bunch of deadlines at the same time as we had a bunch of deadlines for Works in Progress. So I was like, my brain was everywhere. It took me like a month to like just come down from all that and return to normal. You know, um, but that day was insane. I think we had a bunch of people um, in the museum, throughout the museum. We highlighted over 20 artists from the Bay, um, anywhere from visual artists, painters to like sculptures, handmade stuff, woodworking, to dancing, to poetry, um, to breathing. We did there was a lot of like
Oh my
meditation.
god, you covered all bases. What the
There was a
hell?
lot.
Breathe it. There you
It was
go.
amazing. It was amazing. Um, it was one of those things like super corny, but it was one of those things where it's like you had to be there, bro. You had, you had to be there, bro. Uh, but nah, like I think for me personally, I think it showed me like the work that we're doing, the late nights that we had. Whether I was in charge of like I was co-leading marketing with my other friend Nicole, and the wins that we had, and the long nights that we experienced through the process of and the buildup of creating this thing, it was all worth it. It was all incredibly worth it. Like I was talking to one of like our main coordinators, right? And
Yeah.
she was like, yeah, this is amazing. Like we've never had this much energy, this many young people in this museum. There was over there was around like 3,000 people that came into the museum,
Yeah.
and that there's never been that many people in the museum at all.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I think like, and she was telling me that like we were the first group of young people that were allowed to host a space like this, to host the entire space. And she told me like, you guys won't be the last. And that I was like, what, dog? Like I think we always talk about doing things for the future generation. We always talk about um, being like an inspiration for the next generation, but to have a direct correlation to like, no, you guys showed us this museum institution, the biggest museum for Asian art in the country. You showed us that we have to trust and believe in the young people, in the next generation, um, for me to hear that, I think like that made my entire day, my entire experience with that show, um, because it encapsulated exactly what we're trying to do at Dream State. Um, talk about the Asian American experience, talk about the third culture experience, and really pave a way for a better understanding of what it's like to be a kid of immigrants.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a lot of the same mission, a lot of the same sentiments that I shared when trying to get these interview series going, just so that folks have some type of guide point as to
Mhm.
what people are experiencing in their lives, and understand that there are commonalities in our journeys, there are commonalities in our struggles, and ultimately our
Mhm.
successes. And I think what you touched upon, when you mentioned your conversation with the coordinator of the museum, and how your event provided such an impact that
Mhm.
future generations and future groups, future initiatives will be able to be facilitated because of what you guys succeeded in was amazing. You kind of touched on it in your blog post too that you shared in the lead up to this conversation, but the part that I loved most was that you mentioned the things that I'll accomplish aren't just for me; it's for the
Mhm.
people who come after me, and that's just so powerful. That's an amazingly powerful statement. And I think it was very much evident in the feelings that you just conveyed now, but also what you succeeded in doing with your event with Dream State. So kudos to you, man. Kudos, 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 because it takes a lot of work, and I can imagine how long those late nights were and how cumbersome they must have been. But to see you kind of rise to the moment is just as sweet. Is just as sweet, man.
Thank you, bro.
Um,
Yeah, I definitely don't think like, um, definitely that wasn't all me. Like,
yeah,
thank you. I appreciate it. I'm gonna receive it. I appreciate it. Yeah, and like I'm incredibly grateful to be part of the team. Like
yeah,
they didn't become. They're not just coworkers. Like they're actually like homies, like their family, the people I can call upon, that we call upon each other. Like it's an amazing experience, and I'm incredibly lucky to be a part of it.
that's awesome. A lot of people, assume success means eliminating the struggles, but your story highlights that struggles don't disappear; they just evolve ultimately. So looking back, what moments this year, you kind of touched on it with the Dream State event, the academy. What moments this year shifted your perspective and ultimately allowed you to realize that either on yourself, your work, or what fulfillment you've had. Um, what shifted the perspective and understanding what really matters and what really means most to you?
The experience that I think uh, highlighted that struggle and that amazing like send off, and that like the almost like the release of all the pressure, um, was being able to celebrate that win at Works in Progress. Like being able to be at the top of the museum, looking at hundreds of people watching a performance piece next to my best friends, seeing everyone locked in, just taking a moment and stepping back and breathing. That like this is a space that we created, um, with my friends. And yeah, I think that's like that culminated the experience of the stress of portfolio school, advertising, creativity, all that stuff. Like creativity was used for something good that day, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the highlight of my year.
Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
in closing, I guess, so between freelance work, Dream State, and everything you've built so far, what's the next challenge? And then for someone who's tuning in today who won't have the opportunity to connect with you in the future, what's one lesson or message you hope they take away from this new chapter of your story?
If someone wants to connect me to the World Cup or the Olympics, please put me on. I would love to do work. That is like my dream. That's like my like that's my Everest for my freelance career. Like, I'd love to shoot, at the World Cup and at the Olympics. I'd love to shoot for a brand like Nike. Like that is like my big goal, my big dream, to shoot for like commercially for big brands, and to shoot at like to shoot at the mountain of sports.
Love
Um,
that.
and I think if someone can take something away from this story is like it's not just a single person. Your now is not your future. Um, creating a space where it's just not just you, but everyone else that's, or it's not just you, it's your community of people. um, Two is greater than one, and if you can get on the same playing field as everyone else, and if you can get in the same like mental field as everyone else, you guys can freaking change the world. um, just keep continue growing, continue learning. You're not, this isn't your only version of yourself that's going to exist. You're ever evolving.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that. Gian, thank you so much for joining citiZen for the second season of the Scrapbook series. Um, it was nice speaking with you again. This was awesome. And as previously mentioned, and as you may know, this year we're introducing a new concept called the book club. And what makes this season so special is our focus of weaving print media with multimedia, connecting the timeless wisdom of literature to the real world challenges of today and the aspirations of us young folks. So, in prepping for this interview, I revisited a classic piece of literature, one that I kind of revisit every year or so, in The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark
Mm,
Manson.
classic.
So for background, Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck isn't about caring or isn't about not caring at all. It's about caring wisely ultimately. Society tells us, to stay positive, but but that's exhausting ultimately and somewhat inauthentic. Instead, Manson argues that life is hard, and struggles are inevitable. So the key is choosing what's actually worth struggling for. So when you stop wasting energy on things that don't align with your values, you free yourself to focus on what really matters. And it's not about giving zero fucks, it's about giving them selectively. So, Gene, we were introduced via my buddy Dominic Freitas. And since then, I've constantly kept up with your journey from building in your bedroom to making moves at the academy to the dream state into your freelance career now. Your journey ultimately speaks to consistency, persistence, and patience, values I hold very near and dear to me. So, Gene, as you continue to sort through the craziness of this world and your entrepreneurial journey, I wanted to gift this book to you. It's right here. It's a little
Oh my
dusty,
god.
but I'm gonna be sending it your way,
Yes, sir.
as a
Thank
sign of
you.
appreciation, but also as a reminder that as you learn what you should and should not invest mental capital in, you've got folks cheering you on. So the subtle art of not giving a fuck is coming to you, and I'll throw a little note in there. Probably emboss it and send it in your ways, but ultimately, in closing, did you have any last words? This was great, by the way.
I appreciate you, bro. Yeah, dog. Thank you for having me. I'm extremely honored to be highlighted in this. I think,
Yeah.
I don't doubt you know a million and one people, and I'm glad that I get to be a part of your creative journey. And I'm incredibly blessed that we were connected, and
Amen.
that bro, we got to meet in person for real. Whenever,
Yes,
come to the
yes.
Bay,
That's
bro. Like,
next.
come through.
That's next.
Um,
All right, all right. Amazing. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, thank you, thank you. This was citiZen.